The Galactic Dominion's warship, Veritas, drifted silently through the void. Its scanners locked onto an anomaly, a lone human vessel floating in the darkness. Captain Orlan stood on the bridge, watching the data stream across his console. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, but now every officer on board was tense. The readings from the human warship made no sense. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Krell, his clawed fingers tightening around the console. "This ship, it's not transmitting any standard identification codes. No life signs, no power signatures." And yet, he trailed off, staring at the data in disbelief. The Veritas had detected the ship only minutes ago, an isolated structure in deep space, its exterior bearing the unmistakable design of human warships. But the problem was, it shouldn't have been there. No record of an active human patrol in this sector existed, and their intelligence suggested no ships had gone missing. Yet here it was, a massive hulking shape floating lifelessly. "Run a deep scan," Orlan ordered, his voice steady despite the creeping unease in his chest. The scanning beams lanced out, bathing the human warship in invisible waves of energy, searching, probing, analyzing. The data came back in a rush, and the bridge of the Veritas went silent. No, that can't be right," Krell stammered. "The ship, it has no crew, no biological traces, but its structure, it's shifting." Orlan frowned. "Shifting? Explain." Krell hesitated before answering. "It's as if the metal itself is reacting to our scans. The hull is adapting. And the energy levels, Captain, these readings are erratic. The ship's power signatures are fluctuating beyond normal parameters. It's like it's alive." The word sent a chill through the room. Orlan straightened, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. He had spent years patrolling the edges of Dominion space, intercepting human vessels, and breaking their feeble resistance. But this was different. "Attempt communication," he ordered. The comms officer nodded and sent out a standard Dominion hail. Seconds passed. The human ship remained silent, dark, and motionless. And then, without warning, something changed. The Veritas's lights flickered, consoles dimming for half a second before stabilizing. "Captain, we're getting a response," the comms officer said, his voice laced with confusion. "But it's not from our transmission. It's bouncing back our own signal, altered slightly." A deep, static-filled voice echoed through the bridge. "You shouldn't have looked." Every officer on the Veritas went still. The voice was mechanical, distorted, yet familiar, almost as if it was a recording of Orlan himself. The captain's blood ran cold. "Shut down the scan," Orlan ordered immediately. "Now." The crew moved swiftly, cutting off the probing signals. But it was too late. The human warship, which had been floating lifelessly just moments before, suddenly began to shift. Its hull, once a solid structure, seemed to ripple like liquid metal. Dim, flickering lights ran across its body, forming patterns that no one on the bridge could understand. "Captain," Krell said, voice barely above a whisper, "the ship just activated. Something. I don't know what it is, but our scanners are detecting energy buildup." Orlan clenched his fists. "Weapons?" Krell shook his head. "Not weapons, sir. At least, not in any way we understand. But He stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening as a new alert flashed across the screens. The Veritas's engines had just been disabled. Orlan's pulse spiked. "Status report." The engineering officer frantically tapped at his controls. "Our primary thrusters are offline." I don't understand, sir. Nothing's damaged. They just stopped working." A cold realization settled over Orlan. The human ship hadn't fired a single shot. It hadn't moved. And yet, somehow, it had reached into their systems and shut them down. And then, as if mocking them, the human warship moved. Not by engines, not by conventional propulsion. It simply shifted forward, without thrust, without force, Like a ghost gliding through space, it was heading straight for them. A low hum filled the Veritas, a sound so deep it vibrated in their bones. Every console screen flickered, displaying symbols that none of them recognized. Strange, geometric shapes danced across the interface, twisting and changing, as if something was watching them from the other side of the data stream. "Sir," Krell said, barely able to keep his voice steady. I think it's trying to communicate. It's inside our systems." Orlan's breath came slow and steady, his mind racing through possibilities. They were in danger. That much was clear. But this wasn't a standard enemy. This wasn't an ordinary ship. It was something else. The voice returned, this time layered with static and distortion, as if 100 voices were speaking at once. "You shouldn't have looked. Now you will see." And then, without warning, the ship's lights turned on. The once dark vessel now burned with a deep, eerie blue glow, its hull shifting again, changing. Ports and hatches that hadn't been there moments ago opened, revealing impossible machinery, technology that shouldn't exist. And yet there it was. The Dominion officers were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. Orlan turned to his crew. Prepare for battle. But deep in his gut, he knew this wasn't a fight they could win. The silence on the bridge of the Veritas was suffocating. Every officer stood frozen, eyes locked onto the screen where the human warship loomed, its structure shifting in ways that defied logic. Captain Orlan forced himself to stay calm, but deep inside, something cold curled in his chest. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how warships were supposed to behave. The eerie blue glow along the ship's hull pulsed like a heartbeat. The Dominion's best scanners couldn't penetrate the metal, couldn't map its internals. And now, their own ship, the Veritas, a war-class vessel of the Galactic Dominion, was dead in space, its engines unresponsive. "Any progress on restoring thrusters?" Orlan asked, his voice steady, hiding the unease gnawing at him. The engineering officer shook his head. "Negative, Captain. The systems are operational. Nothing is damaged. It's like something external is holding them in place." "That's impossible," Krell muttered. "No known technology can do that." And yet it was happening. The human warship moved again, a slow, fluid motion, as if it was drifting. But there was no inertia, no propulsion. It was simply there one moment, and slightly closer the next. A new alert flashed across the bridge, drawing everyone's attention. The scanners had finally picked up something, a brief energy surge from within the human warship. Krell's eyes widened. "Captain, I don't think we're alone out here." Orlan turned sharply. "Explain." The lieutenant swallowed hard before speaking. That energy signature, it wasn't just a random fluctuation. It was structured, rhythmic, almost like. He hesitated, as if afraid to say it, almost like a heartbeat. The word sent a ripple of discomfort through the crew. A heartbeat. Ships didn't have heartbeats. Ships didn't move without propulsion. Ships didn't disable enemy warships without firing a shot. Orlan exhaled slowly. "Try hailing them again." The comms officer hesitated but followed the order. A message was sent. Seconds passed. The silence dragged on, stretching unbearably long. And then, a response. The bridge speakers crackled with static before a deep mechanical voice filled the room. "You scanned. You watched. Now you will see." Every screen on the Veritas suddenly changed. The ship's systems, once showing standard Dominion interfaces, were flooded with symbols, alien, shifting, incomprehensible. It was as if the warship was rewriting their systems in real time. Orlan's hands clenched. "Shut it down. Cut all external connections." "It's not working, Captain," the technician yelled. "It's inside our network." Then the lights flickered, and for a brief second, something else appeared on the screen. A face, or something like it, twisted, unnatural, not human, not machine, but something in between. A deep, hollow eye stared at them through the static, and for the first time in his life, Orlan felt true fear. The image vanished as quickly as it came. The screens went black. And then the ship shuddered. The Veritas was moving, but not by its own engines. The human warship had extended a tether of pure energy, wrapping around the Dominion vessel like a predator claiming its prey. Orlan's pulse thundered. Weapons. Fire everything. The gunner obeyed, launching plasma torpedoes at point-blank range. The projectiles raced forward, striking the human ship's hull, and disappeared. No explosion, no impact. It was as if the warheads had simply ceased to exist. Krell's voice was barely above a whisper. "Captain, what have we found?" Orlan had no answer, because deep down, he was beginning to understand the truth. They had not found the warship. The warship had found them. The Veritas trembled, its reinforced hull groaning under an invisible force. Every officer on the bridge stood frozen, their eyes locked on the monitors. The human warship wasn't just holding them in place anymore. It was doing something to them. "Status report." Captain Orlan barked. The engineer's hands flew over the controls. I don't know. Systems are fluctuating. Power is being rerouted, but not by us." Orlan's grip tightened on the armrest of his chair. "Weapons? Shields. Shields are up, but they're useless. Something's overriding our energy output. Weapons are offline. I can't." The engineer stopped, his voice faltering. Krell leaned over the console. His face, usually calm even in battle, was pale. "Captain, I think it's inside our systems." The word sent a chill through the crew. On screen, the human warship remained motionless, its eerie blue glow pulsing rhythmically. But something felt different. The air on the bridge was heavy, the silence stretching too long. The monitors flickered again, and this time, the strange alien symbols didn't just appear, they rearranged themselves into patterns. Patterns that looked disturbingly like language. Orlan's throat went dry. "What does it say?" Krell hesitated. I think it's a question." The symbols twisted again, morphing, reshaping. Then the bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice, deep, layered, inhuman. "Do you fear?" The words sent a ripple of unease through the crew. The voice wasn't a transmission. It wasn't coming from a comms channel. It was emanating from the ship itself. The Veritas trembled again, and this time, it wasn't subtle. The hull groaned, metal creaking like something was pressing against it from the outside. The artificial gravity flickered for a second before stabilizing. Orlan forced himself to breathe. "Who are you?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice firm. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the voice returned, lower, almost amused. "You scanned. You searched. Now you will understand." The screens flashed white. A pulse of energy surged through the ship, and suddenly, the crew wasn't alone. Shadows flickered at the edges of the bridge, tall, indistinct figures standing in the periphery of their vision. They weren't human. They weren't Dominion. They weren't real, or at least, they shouldn't have been. Orlan's breath caught. The figures didn't move, didn't speak, but they were watching. And then, a scream tore through the ship. One of the officers collapsed, clutching his head. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated in terror. "I see them," he gasped. "They're inside my head." Another officer staggered back from her console. "Captain, we have tow." Her voice cut off, her body convulsing. She fell to the floor, trembling. Krell spun around, panic creeping into his voice. "Captain, we need to break free. Whatever this thing is, it's..." Too late, the voice interrupted. And then the human warship moved. Not by engines, not by propulsion. It simply was, one moment distant, the next closer. The tether of energy gripping the Veritas tightened, pulling them toward the abyss. The crew's fear was no longer hidden. It was raw, uncontrolled. Because in that moment, they realized something horrifying. This wasn't a warship. This was something far worse. Something not built, but born, and it had chosen them. The Veritas shuddered as the unseen force dragged it forward. The human warship, if it could even be called that, loomed closer, its shifting metal skin pulsing like a living thing. The eerie blue glow lining its hull intensified, as if the ship was reacting to their fear. Captain Orlan gritted his teeth. Override manual controls. Cut all power if you have to. The engineering officer frantically worked at his console. I can't. It's not our systems anymore. The ship is running, but we aren't the ones controlling it. Orlan's pulse pounded in his ears. The Dominion was the most advanced force in the galaxy. No enemy had ever taken control of one of their ships, let alone without firing a single shot. And yet, here they were, paralyzed, helpless, being dragged toward something that should not exist. The screens flickered again. The strange symbols reappeared, twisting and shifting. This time, they didn't form words. They formed faces, dozens of them, alien, distorted, unrecognizable. And yet something about them felt real, as if they weren't just images, but memories. Krell's voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, those look like crew logs." The realization struck Orlan like a hammer. Crew logs, but not Dominion crew logs. Human. And then the voice returned, no longer distant, no longer just a whisper of static. It was here, inside the ship, inside their minds. They came before you. They scanned. They searched. They were warned. The screens shifted. The faces screamed. A silent, horrifying wail that sent a shiver down Orlan's spine. The images twisted, showing glimpses of something terrible. Ships disintegrating, entire fleets vanishing. And then, darkness. The voices fell silent. The bridge dimmed, and the human warship stopped moving. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing happened. The crew barely breathed. Then, the tether released. The Veritas jerked as its engines came back online. Consoles flickered to life, Dominion systems restoring themselves, as if nothing had happened. Orlan's hands tightened into fists. He didn't trust this. He didn't trust any of it. Get us out of here. Now. The pilot didn't hesitate. The Veritas's thrusters roared, pushing them backward, away from the human ship. And that's when the final message came through. The voice, now quiet, almost sorrowful. Run, before you become like us. And then, in the blink of an eye, the human warship vanished. You said. The Veritas hung in the void, its systems flickering back to normal, but the silence on the bridge was anything but reassuring. No one spoke. No one moved. The human warship had vanished, disappearing as if it had never been there at all. But every officer on the bridge knew the truth. Something had happened. Captain Orlan took a slow, steady breath. Status report. The engineering officer hesitated before speaking. All systems are back online, Captain. Engines, shields, weapons, everything's functional again. His voice was shaky, uncertain. But there's something strange in the data logs. Orlan turned to him. Explain. The officer tapped at his console, his hands unsteady. There's an anomaly in our internal records. The ship's systems detected an external presence, a signal that wasn't part of our network. But here's the problem. He turned to Orlan, his eyes wide. It's still there. The word sent a chill through the bridge. Krell leaned forward. Still there. But the human ship is gone. The officer swallowed. Yes, but whatever it left behind isn't. A new alert appeared on the main screen. Strange. Shifting symbols filled the display, unreadable, alive. And then, without warning, the ship's comms activated. You were warned. The same voice. The same eerie, layered tone. The crew flinched. Orlan forced himself to stay calm. Who are you? For a moment, there was silence. Then, the symbols on the screen shifted again. This time, they formed a single word. Echo. Krell exhaled sharply. "Captain, I think that Warship wasn't just a vessel. I think it was something else. Something alive." The engineering officer's fingers flew over the console. "Sir, the signal, it's embedded in our systems. It's not just data. It's learning." He hesitated. "It's watching us." The lights flickered. A whisper, just below the range of hearing, crept through the bridge, a sound like distant voices, too many to count. Orlan made his decision. "We're leaving. Now. Full burn, maximum speed." The pilot obeyed. The Veritas's thrusters roared to life, propelling them away from the sector at full speed. But even as the ship moved, the screens remained filled with the shifting symbols. The presence didn't fade. It was still with them. And then one last message appeared on the display. "You scanned. You searched. Now we see you too." And somewhere, deep in the void, something else was watching. "You said." The Veritas surged through space at maximum speed, putting as much distance as possible between them and the place where the human warship had vanished. But no one on the bridge felt safe. The symbols still flickered on their screens. The whispering hum still echoed faintly through the ship's comms. Whatever the human ship had been, it had left something behind. Captain Orlan stood rigid, his mind racing. The Dominion had encountered thousands of species, fought wars against civilizations that spanned entire sectors. But this was different. This was something beyond technology, beyond strategy. It was something watching them. "Any progress on purging the signal?" he asked, his voice tense. The engineering officer worked frantically at his console, sweat beading on his forehead. "We've isolated the anomaly, but..." He hesitated. "It's not behaving like a normal virus. It's not damaging our systems. It's just there, like it's waiting." Orlan frowned. Waiting for what? Krell, standing near the scanners, suddenly stiffened. "Captain, you need to see this." Orlan turned to the main screen. A cold weight settled in his chest. The long-range scanners had picked up something. Not a ship, not a fleet. A shadow in the void. Massive, unmoving, just at the edge of their sensors. It hadn't been there moments ago. And then, the whispering grew louder. The screens glitched, distorting into static before stabilizing again. The symbols reappeared, shifting, reforming. This time, they took shape faster, forming something new. A map. Orlan's blood ran cold. It was a map of the Dominion core worlds. Every capital, every major military installation, every hidden research station. Krell's voice was barely above a whisper. They weren't just scanning us. He swallowed hard. They were scanning everything. A message appeared beneath the map, written in the same eerie, shifting script. "We see you now." And then, every console on the bridge shut down. For 3 agonizing seconds, the ship was plunged into total darkness. No lights, no sound, no hum of the engines, just an empty void swallowing them whole. Then, everything flickered back to life. Orlan's breath came fast. "Status." The pilot checked his readings, his hands trembling. We've dropped out of FTL, Captain." His voice broke. "But we're not where we should be." The main screen reactivated, and when it did, the crew froze. Outside the ship, the void stretched endlessly, stars distant and unfamiliar. But in front of them, dominating the darkness, a fleet, silent, waiting. And at its center, another human warship, bigger, older, its surface writhing, shifting like something alive. Then the voice returned, calm, inevitable. "You searched, you scanned, you ran." The whispering grew deafening. The screen distorted. And then, "Now we come for you." The bridge of the Veritas was silent. No one dared to move. No one dared to breathe. The fleet before them loomed in the void, an impossible silent armada. Hundreds of ships, dark and unrecognizable, stretching into the abyss. And at their center, the warship, the thing that had first scanned them. But it was different now. Larger, alive. Its hull moved, shifting like something breathing, its eerie blue glow pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. The Dominion had encountered countless fleets before. They had fought in wars that spanned entire star systems. But this wasn't war. This was a message. Captain Orlan's mouth was dry. His hands were clenched so tightly into fists that his knuckles were white. He had fought in battles where entire planets burned. But this was fear. The screens flickered. The Dominion's most classified data still glowed across the monitors. The map of their homeworlds, their fleets, their weaknesses. Krell whispered, "Captain, if they send that data to anyone." Orlan didn't let him finish. "Weapons online. Target the nearest ship." The bridge crew hesitated. Someone spoke, quiet, uncertain. "Sir, our weapons are online, but they won't fire." The pilot swallowed. "Captain, I don't think we're in control of this ship anymore." The whispering grew louder. And then the voice returned. "You searched, you scanned, you ran." The symbols on the screen shifted. "Now you will listen." Orlan's body went rigid as something moved at the edge of his vision. The shadows on the bridge shifted, not just from the lights, but as if they were watching. Krell inhaled sharply. "Sir," his voice was shaking. "Look." Orlan turned to the screen, and his blood froze. The map of the Dominion changed. It was no longer just locations, no longer just fleet positions. It showed something moving. Something inside Dominion space. It wasn't their fleet. It wasn't a known threat. It was them. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of the same living warships, already there. Hidden, waiting. The whispering rose into a deafening roar. The voice spoke one last time. "You wanted to see us. Now you will know us." And then the fleet moved. The void tore open, and the Dominion's greatest nightmare began.